Oh, how good. The Chiefs 6-0 and Kirikiriroa Hamilton. Well, JK's away. He's over in Hong Kong trying to find some more voices of the corridor. Chiefs down in Palmerston North. We've replaced them with the two Johnsons, Taylor and obviously Tony, not related. Kirsty's back in the hot seat. Plenty to sink your teeth into, including Goldie's Form 15 of next year. Confused? Don't worry, we've got your back. Let's go.
Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening and welcome into the breakdown. Well, the Chiefs remain kings of Super Rugby for now. Another week and another injury for the All Blacks. Sevu Reece this time around and a season-ending injury for him. And is Dave Rennie heading to the Blues? We will discuss all of that plus so much more. Taylor Johnson is in the house. Tony Johnson, Mills Muliaina. I'm looking at you, TJ, to bring the Voci de Korodoro today.
I don't know what was more exciting, the game in Hamilton or Mill's intro. After an intro like that, I can't wait to hear what we've all got to say.
Well, I want an honesty call from all of you. After 6 rounds of Super Rugby, before the season started, did anyone predict the Chiefs to be top and the Crusaders and Blues to be 4th and 5th? Anyone?
Can we rewind to the first episode of the breakdown of the year? Because I said the Chiefs are going all the way. They've got the best team. They've got the most settled team. So we can clip that back in hopefully one day and say that I said that first, because I've been backing them the whole way and they've proven me right.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say one New Zealand team we would have thought, but I think with the way the Chiefs has gone about in 6-0, you would have thought they might have had a sort of hiccup, considering they started with the Crusaders, but the way they sort of started the competition, great way to go into the bye, TJ. Yeah,
I looked at the way they lined up in that pre-season game that we did, and I just thought, wow, the depth in this side is phenomenal. And what I really love about them, I think we're seeing the development of an identity of this team under Clayton McMillan, who is very much becoming a rising force in New Zealand coaching. I mean, in a game played in difficult conditions, that was all about character, it was about attitude, because they say defence is about attitude. When you have to make 100 more tackles than your opposition, that said so much about this Chiefs team and why they are where they are.
Well, this was the big game of the weekend, right? We've been talking about this game for weeks. So let's talk Super Rugby, all thanks to Nurofen, available at Chemist Warehouse. Everyone's talking up the form wingers in the competition. Every week we've spoken about Leicester, Whainganuku, we've spoken about Mark Telea, but what about Imoni Narawa after that performance in Hamilton Mills? Sevu Reece gone for the All Blacks, there's a place available. Do we have to start talking about some of these other guys?
Oh, I think so, and Imoni's been doing it for the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks now. I mean, the interesting part for me is when it comes to the big games, do these guys sort of stand up? You know, he's been over and obviously against the Waratahs was good. The week before that he was, but then this is a huge derby match. You know, do you get up once again for these big ones? Has he done it? Absolutely. You start talking. You're putting his name amongst those other wingers.
2 great finishes, brilliant. It was like the touchline was an electric fence. He just was not going to go over that touchline, but also a lovely shift move, burst up the centre. We've always known that this guy's got extreme talent, and we're really, with the maturity now, we're starting to see it come to fruition. It's a heck of a battle line. Normally in New Zealand, we're very strong on the left side of the field, the left wingers, and the right winger, we're going, OK, who do you slot in there? Now, it's really sad about Sevu Reece, but Mark Telea has been lights out. Narawa comes into the frame. We've still to see Will Jordan, and we know Sean Stevenson can play right wing.
Yeah, Imoni Narawa is special. I mean, like, he's played 2 less games than everyone else and is in the top 5 for defenders beaten, because he's just so electric, and he just has good vision as well. He spots the right gaps and he knows where to go. So, look, I think he's really exciting, but we're so blessed with so many good wingers here at the moment.
Over the last sort of 5 to 8 years, Mills, the Chiefs, they haven't struggled, but they haven't been right at the very top where they've wanted to be under their last 2 coaches, right? What is Clayton McMillan doing that is different?
I think they've found a really good balance. I think McKenzie plays a big part, because for a number of those years, we sort of, it will be at the year they went to Japan, they've sort of struggled to get that sort of, solid 10. He's not a traditional solid 10 because he can go, off sort of off the game plan. But the thing is, they've found a balance in understanding what his game plan, what his game mindset is, and then sort of gelling it within the team. He's got a really good, bunch of forwards that have been there for a wee while, and they've gone through a lot of hurt. When they lost like 8 in a row or something like that. So he's created a culture of that sort of hurt and pain, but also that start. You can't underestimate that start against the Crusaders. They went down there and they absolutely dominated. They just ignited something in their confidence, and they've just gone on from there.
If we take a look at the match stats, the Blues won most of the match stats. TJ, they'll be looking at this one thinking they missed an opportunity here. Are there now serious question marks around the decision-making that went on that field, the ability to finish from the Blues as well?
Yeah, it's very much the ability to finish, because if you look back against the Crusaders, they twice had the ball over the line, didn't score. I think in this game it was 3 times over the line, didn't score, including a really out-of-character gaff by Beauden Barrett stepping on the dead ball line. Interesting. I talked to Matthew Cooper, who was, being presidential now, was sitting right in the middle of the field. He said he felt like the whole game he was watching the backs of the blue shirts. In other words, they were dominating the attack, but they just didn't find a way through. And again, you just go down to that Chiefs defence. And again, the Blues have got to start making these chances count. They are not out of this by any stretch of the imagination, but they've got to start turning opportunities into points.
Yeah, and I understand Leon McDonald's frustration as well. You see him in the coach's box, slapping the table and getting frustrated because they weren't out-coached. They had a good game plan. They won the territory battle. They won the possession battle. They had more visits to the opposition 22, but the players themselves weren't finishing, and that's the most frustrating thing for Leon, is he's giving them the tools that they need, but they're just not using them correctly.
Dalton also made a startling admission as a leader to you in the post-match interview as well.
Yeah, he said, look, I'm going to put my hand up. There's probably some kicks we should have taken. We actually probably should have gone for goal sometimes. And I know, TJ, you got something to say here, because you say just because you don't go for the 3 doesn't mean you've left 3 points out there. But I do know that, it was him versus Sam Cane, right? And particularly around leadership, not just what they do on the field. And I think Sam Cane led the Chiefs well. They were behind on a lot of the stats, but they didn't ever seem frazzled on the field. Defensively, they were very good. When they were on attack, they looked very structured. So I think, Dalton, although he put his hand up for that, it is a team effort type of thing too.
No, the point I was making is that just because you turn down 4 shots at goal doesn't mean you've left 12 points out there, because it's the old butterfly effect, isn't it? You kick that penalty, it changes the course of the game. They did get some pay out of the decisions. Yeah, maybe they could have. Different day, they would have. Richie McCaw always talked about accumulating points, didn't he? Don't leave empty-handed. Big decision in a tight game like that. But again, that they had other opportunities as well.
It's the balance. We sat here last week and we spoke about, this is a massive head-to-head battle between these 2 very good players. And you used to see it then, Sam Cane, he's had all the experience in the world to be able to go, okay, here's a massive game. This is what I'm going to do. Okay, we'll accumulate points. We'll go from there. We'll have Damien slot up, even if it's 55 metres out, and slot a goal, because it's an intense game. Dalton will learn a lot from that in terms of his leadership. He's a great player in terms of that, but he needs those sort of runs on the board in terms of his leadership around his team. And you've also got to get the balance right in terms of what his team is going through as well. They're a little bit sort of down in confidence in terms of the finishing. So perhaps that's what they sort of needed, get them up late start. They had a horrid start with the Chiefs scoring early, but get them back into the game and grow that confidence.
So if you look at the All Black matchups, first and foremost, we'll look at that Sam Cane, Dalton Papali'i and what the stats say. But as you said, TJ, the numbers don't tell you the whole story, do they? Did the Chiefs win all the head-to-head matchups, or is it not as simple as that?
No, I think they did win the key matchups for sure. Mackenzie, Beauden Barrett got better as the game went on. He had a horror period there for a while in the first half. Didn't make a good start. Damien McKenzie wasn't perfect either, but I'd say he edged that. Dalton Papali'i, Sam Cane. Look, to me, Papali'i's stats are very good for this game, but some things aren't told by a stat, and you just talk to the players. And Brad Weber said it after the game, didn't he? That what a great presence on the field Sam Cane is in a tight match like this. Him, guys like Brodie Retallick, when that physicality is oh so important. There's no one more physical than him.
Look at what the stats are saying. The numbers very much favour Dalton Papali'i, don't they? Rucks visited Taylor, it's nearly double. Tackle success, though, Sam Cane, 100%.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's the All Blacks captain, and I know lots of people have been criticising him, but look, he put out a good performance. Yes, he didn't hit as many rucks as Dalton. Dalton was everywhere on the field, but again, we go back to being a little bit more than just what's happening on the field, being leaders. So look, I think Sam Cane definitely won that head-to-head, but I am going to disagree with TJ. There was one head-to-head I think the Blues won, and that was front row. has to be the front
Yeah.
row. I mean, the Blues were 8th, you know, in scrums. The Chiefs went backwards multiple times. I think Offa and Nepo really stood up. Set piece was a huge issue for them. You know, they were last in lineouts and they actually nailed them. So I think, you know, it wasn't all negatives for the Blues. They actually showed a lot of improvement in areas that they wanted to improve.
Mills, if you look at the battle at 10, Damien McKenzie outshone Richie Mo'onga in week 1. Fast forward to week 6, and he just did that to Beauden Barrett as well. It's easy to say that in a winning team, Damien's shining, or is he doing so much more than the incumbents? What do you think?
I think he is doing, but I think they've got a settled sort of game, you know, awareness that they know what Damien's going to do. The forwards understand if we're getting ourselves into trouble, this is what we kind of fall back into. Damien sits really nicely, you know, when things aren't going right and they've sort of gone backwards, he'll sit in the pocket and he'll kick. Everyone knows that. 2 years ago, they wouldn't have. And so they're all on the same page, TJ, as opposed to, you know, the Crusaders. They're struggling. We haven't seen this from the Crusaders before. They're struggling, so are the Blues, you know, in terms of their rhythm. The Chiefs, they've come out of the gates and they are flying because they understand their 10, their 9's backing them up, and they all understand their game plan.
Yeah, 2 big advances in Damien McKenzie's game, I think. I think in the early stages, the opposition didn't know what he was doing, but sometimes his teammates didn't either. And I think they're in sync a lot more now. And the other thing is his kicking game. 250-22 so far, and he nearly got a couple more. His kicking game, the length of his kicking game has really improved. So these are a couple of really significant advances that he's made in his game.
So should we be looking at Damien McKenzie as a serious option at 10?
It's hard because, you know, as we were saying earlier, with the All Blacks, they've really only got one specialist 10 in Richie Mo'onga, because we see Stephen Perofeta and Beauden Barrett floating in between 10 and 15. And, you know, Damien McKenzie's obviously doing the same. But he's been outstanding. And I think the reason is kind of touching on what TJ said is, he's so ad hoc and almost random, for lack of a better word. So every time he has the ball, the opposition actually does hang back and they give him time because they're not sure what he's going to do. So, yeah, I think he's a genuine option at 10.
What about Beauden Barrett? There were a couple of comments last night, Mills, about him maybe lacking a bit of confidence, not knowing whether he was playing at 10 or 15. What do the Blues do with him? Do they maybe switch Stephen Perofeta and Beauden Barrett around for the season? What would you be doing?
Yeah, I would be doing that. I know it worked for them last year, the fact that he was at 10 and Perofeta's at the back. He lacks confidence. You don't see that in a great player like Beauden Barrett. He's still great in terms of how he's playing, but he kind of just seems offbeat, a little bit confused about what he's going to actually do. And that's kind of had the ripple effect on the team. So when you say they get into the right zones and you're trying to score, well, usually Beauden Barrett is sort of actually stepping up and he's running the colour because he knows he's a 10. He's played a little bit of fullback, well, quite a bit of fullback now with Mo'onga at the All Blacks. And I watching him, it just feels like he's now thinking he's a fullback. And so when you're a fullback, you take a little bit more time. You don't you're not as assertive in that sort of playmaker role. Perofeta's actually taking that on too. Now he's gone a little bit quiet, you know what I mean? Because they're unsure, almost like when we sort of, you know, started that whole, 10 and 15, 2 playmaker roles. It's now got to the point for the Blues, unfortunately, that you kind of feel that for their playmaker, and they've lost their sort of direction. So I definitely think perhaps it's something they need to really consider. In terms of D-Mac, I think he is. I think he's a 10. Mo'onga for me is still our All Black starter. D-Mac's a 10-15. So that's an easy slot in off the bench. I think Beauden now is our fullback. I think Beauden starts at fullback and he becomes a 10 option. And I think that's where he's starting to feel a little bit, what am I actually doing?
What do you do with him at the Blues then, if he thinks he's going to be playing 15 for the All Blacks later on in the year, TJ?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a factor. I thought he got better as the game wore on, definitely. And the other thing I'd say about Beauden Barrett, if you like your stats, well, he's got more kicks that have been actually won back, retrieved, than anyone else. So he's working on the variations in his kicking game, and actually the numbers say they're working reasonably well. I get that. I thought the previous week when Bodie was actually off in Melbourne, I thought Stephen Perofeta ran things really well. He like Richie Mo'onga, he has the ability to function in traffic. He's not a stepper as such. He more glides his way through. I really like it. I think it's something that they could consider doing. I just think it's one of those situations where maybe a little bit more definition of who's what might iron that little issue out. And we're halfway through. There's still plenty of rugby to be played.
I just think just taking a bit of pressure off him. He's already don't even give him the goal kicking. He's kicking well at goal. Give it to Perofeta. He's a young buck. Let him have and let Bodie sit back and really enjoy playing fullback.
Well, let's take a closer look at the impact Damian McKenzie had on the match in Hamilton yesterday with our Musashi power play. Mills, we've pulled out some clips of Damian McKenzie and what he was actually doing. Talk us through it.
Oh, yeah, this is where, I was talking about before, not conventional, comes back, goes all over the place, everyone's waiting, but they know
away with that?
yeah, something's going to happen. And then, there's an opportunity there. Look how tight, those defenders are. There's space out wide, but they understand, OK, well, if he gives it, it's on. And then he's got, Anthony Nano Saturo and the outside backs just finishing their role. Again, I come back to my point. He's at the back here now. He's got so much time. That's what it seems like, so much time. He sizes things up, he's unsure. OK, I'll give it to you here. But look how far they've gotten, since he collected the ball. And he was going backwards after a missed bounce. Again, unsure, looks over the top. There's a bit of space in behind. They come back here, they ended up getting a penalty from that. But have a look at the players around him, Taylor. They all understand that he could end up all over the place, but they get on the same page.
I think that's the thing, is he's really decisive. Like, he's going to do something different, but he makes a decision and then they 100% back him each time. And I think because the Chiefs have had the most settled team in Super Rugby for the New Zealand sides, that everyone is getting those connections. You look at the Blues and the Crusaders, there's a lot of chopping and changing, but just looking at that, he's got the ball on the string, at trainings. It looks like they're just having fun out there on the field and on the ground, So I think he's been outstanding and he's a real leader for this team. And it's interesting because when people come back from Japan, they're often not as good as they were when they've left, and he's actually just come back better, and playing in that kind of, they like to say easy comp, but he's been awesome.
That's true. He's flipped the switch, right? We had Bowden Barrett come back in, Brodie Retallick. It took them a little bit of time, TJ, to settle in, and not this guy.
No. And he's very much in the frame now. World Cup, you'd have to think Moonga, Barrett, McKenzie. You've got some versatility there. I tell you what, though, when it comes to those outside backs, and those three are going to impact on who they take as outside backs, boy, they're going to have some tough decisions to make.
We thought, since we're talking rugby versus league, and there's been all this chat about Joseph Suaalii, of course, the young Rooster star that is going across to Rugby Australia in the next 2 years, who would actually make the transition smoothly? Of course, it's happened in the past. Brad Thorne, Sonny Bill Williams, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who's currently done it. But who do you think would make that transition from NRL to rugby, or the other way around, Taylor?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation because I think one is harder to go into. So I do think if you've never played rugby union and you're heading into it from the NRL, it's difficult. There's so many technical rules, and I think that's why a lot of people enjoy watching the NRL, because there's a lot less rules. But in saying that, I think someone like Isaiah Papali'i would be awesome. He was the Mount Albert Grammar School captain. You've seen the footage right here. Won them a top 4 title, New Zealand schools, and then when he decided to go to the NRL, a lot of clubs who were looking to sign him were upset about it. So I think it would be quite easy for him to transition in. But equally, I wouldn't mind seeing someone like Asafo Aumua have a go in the NRL. I know Sean Stevenson's name has been thrown around, but even Timothy Tavatavanawe, he's a winger. He's not the fastest winger, but he's got pure brunt force. Seeing him in the NRL, amazing. I'd love to see it. So, I know that the debate has ignited a bit of war of words, which I love. I love the fact that they've done that. I love the fact that, there's people piping up about the situation as, union poaching from NRL. But you go to any first 15 game in Auckland, actually anywhere in New Zealand, there are about 12 NRL scouts and all of that. So I don't want to hear any of this, you're stealing it from union, because it's stealing from NRL, because it is the other way around.
Well, Mills is a scout, so have you poached a few of those rugby league players? Mills, who would you like to see?
First and foremost, I am not a scout. I'm just there to watch the good talent of New Zealand come through the grades and stay in rugby. That's all I'm there for.
There you go.
But I think if you look at sort of who would transition out, for me, you sort of often look at the game drivers, the superstars of the game in rugby league, the 6s and the 7s, Nathan Cleary is probably one that sort of stands out, but it's a little bit different. Their skill set is, and the game management around rugby league is a lot different to rugby. So in rugby, we just seen it. The first 5, Damian McKenzie, look how he controls the game. In league, you've got a little bit more time, but you're taking the ball right to the line. You're tactically getting your guys around. The kicking aspect, that's huge as well, because, they don't kick the ball away unless it's, the last TJ. So I look at players like that and I just think, I don't know whether they transition well into this unless you're a winger or a Joseph Suaalii, because he has got the skill set.
Well, yeah, they've paid $1.6 million for him. I think if New Zealand Rugby had $1.6 million to spare, I would rather they spent it keeping 3 good players in New Zealand for longer, or putting it into the structure of the game. I can understand what Australia's done here, and it's come off for them already, because before the guys even played a game, even on the rugby league shows, they were talking about rugby union. Rugby union has taken such a kicking in Australia in recent years, and this is publicity.
Perfect.
Probably you've got half your money back in publicity, and it was worth it just to watch Gus Gould throwing the toys around, who I really enjoy watching, but the hide, as you suggested, to think, picking the eyes out of rugby league, I don't think so. not compared to what's gone over the last few decades.
Well, which Super Rugby side is going to get the services of Joseph Suaalii? Because let's be honest, all the Australian sides need it at the moment, right? If you look at the top 6 teams, 5 of those are New Zealand teams. The Brumbies sit second at the moment, but who will make up the other 2 positions in the 8? That's the big question. It's basically a lucky dip, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think if you've got the 6 on there, the Drua are currently in 7th, and they've got, 3 more home games to play, and I mean, that's worth 10 points for them.
They make the quarterfinals, don't they?
Well, I still think they'll have to win 1 more game away from home. They can't just do it on their home record, but they're a possibility. I still think the Waratahs, I know they're second to bottom at the moment, but I look at that, so there's too much quality in that team. I think they could make a run through and get there.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, ideally would like our 5, New Zealand teams in there. I think the Waratahs, they've got too much quality players. Sort of, the Drua for me, get their sort of spot, given their home games that they've got. I think possibly it's going to come down to, that last sort of space, that place the Reds and the Highlanders, unfortunately. I'd love to see the Highlanders go in there, but I think the Highlanders run home is a lot more difficult than what the Reds have. And the Reds have sort of been hot and cold, and they've got some quality players there, but I think they could actually be the ones that sort of sneak in.
Yeah, I think the Rebels have been the most improved side in Australian Super Rugby for a long time. I mean, every time you played them, you'd get a cricket score. At the moment, they've got some good wins, but they've also lost really narrowly. Like, they played the Hurricanes and only lost by 6. They lost to the Force by 7. So they've actually been really good. And the connections have been really good for that team as well, because they are a team that's been together for a while, so they can actually build on that. So I think the Rebels could get in there, but I'm definitely going the Drua, because I think it is so smart to play in Fiji, because everyone gets their gas. As someone who's played in Fiji, I threw up on the sideline, I was that overheated. So it is very hot there. So I can just imagine how hard it is to suck in the big ones over there.
Well, they're definitely making Fiji their fortress, aren't they? I asked you earlier about, is it something that Moana Pacifica could look at doing, moving some more games to the islands? You've obviously got one there in a couple of weeks' time, the first one for you.
Yeah, I think ideally that's the whole point of the franchise, is to actually be there. And the reason why they started off in Auckland was because COVID, and it's where the facilities are. The real disappointing thing about the islands is that the facilities aren't quite where they're at. The stadium in Nuku'alofa in Tonga isn't approved by World Rugby yet, because there's a lot of things that need to happen there. So I think as much as Moana Pacifica and the management want to take games there, they just can't because of the facilities. But I think, I think this game coming up in a couple of weeks' time in Apia will kind of be quite telling, with the crowd, just how the players play as well, because they're not based in the islands like Fiji, so they're, the Fijians are used to the hot weather. It's going to be a tough ask for both Moana Pacifica players and the opposition.
Exactly, they're playing the Reds as well, so it's a big game for both of those 2 teams. Now, Jeff Wilson is not here. You may or may not have noticed that, but he is doing the Form 15 this week, and he changes the rules all the time, doesn't he? It is not a Form 15 this week, it is a Future 15. It is the potential 15 that Scott Robertson, the next All Blacks coach, could name when the All Blacks play their first test in 2024. So yes, we're looking a year in advance, but this is who Jeff has selected. Ethan de Groot, Samisoni Tokiaho and Tyrell Lomax make up his front row. In the second row, Scott Barrett and Tupou Va'i. Luke Jacobson at 6, Sam Cane at 7 and Hoskins Sotutu wearing the number 8 jersey. Cortez Ratimer at 9, Damien McKenzie gets the nod at 10. with no Richie Mo'unga or Bowden Barrett around. Geordie Barrett, Rieko Ioane in the midfield, and the back three of Leicester, Whainga Nuku, Mark Talia and Sean Stevenson. Before we let these guys rip into it, we're going to let Jeff defend his team himself.
Well, just for Mills Muliaina, what I've done once again for the Form 15, I've changed the rules. So what are the rules this week? I'm picking the form players from this year's competition who we know are going to be available for Scott Robertson next year. So Mills, you'll be upset once again, but there's 3 key positions. I found it really, really tough. There's no Ardie Savea in 2024. So on form this year, I'm going Hoskins Satutu. Now here's the big one. There's no Aaron Smith next year. There's no Brad Weber. So who am I going at halfback? Well, I'm looking at Cortez Ratama and thinking to myself, on this year's form, if he continues to play this well, I think he's an All Black in 2024. And then clearly, Sean Stevenson has been the standout performer in this year's Super Rugby competition. So with no Will Jordan on the field at the moment, I'm thinking to myself, he could be an All Black in 2024. You guys are going to debate and discuss. I'm not going to be there to defend myself, but give it a crack and see who you've got for Razor Robertson in 2024.
Hey.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'm not sure if anyone can argue with the front row and second row, but if we take a look at the loose forwards, what do we think? Are we surprised with who he's selected? Of course, Ardie Savea will not be there. He'll be in Japan. Shannon Frizzell is also gone. Are we happy with these 3?
First of all, when he started that piece to camera, I'm sure there was some goalposts in the background and they moved as he was recording it. That's Jeff for you, moving the goalposts at all. Look, there's a name that, firstly, it was great to see Josh Lord back playing for the Chiefs in the curtain raiser. And so hopefully he'll be back in the frame. Very good prospect. The guy that, to me, is a real up-and-comer, and I just love everything about his game, is Dom Gardner. And I don't know, either as a lock or as a 6, to me, he's got the potential to be both.
Starting next year?
He'll be in the frame for sure if he keeps going the way he is.
Mills, what do you think?
Yeah, man, isn't that exciting? Like, I mean, besides the fact that Goldie changes the criteria, I'm wondering whether we even give it any time, because next week will be something totally different, you know? So, but when you look at those guys that are staying, I know we talk a lot about the guys that are exiting. Man, there is some talent. With still, I mean, guys like Blackadder, you've got the halfback debate as well.
Halfback is very interesting,
huge, isn't it? You mean you've got Whakatawa, you've got Roigard, you've got Christie that's still there. I mean, you've got guys like Noah Hotham that are coming through too. So when you look at the team that Jeff's named, and then you think about the guys that are still coming through, man, we've got some exciting talent coming through our ranks.
Yeah, I like Hoskins at 8. I think Hoskins is our best number 8 at the moment. You look at his stats in Super Rugby, he's really taken the opportunities he's been given this year. He knows there's a World Cup spot on the line. Yeah, I think he's outstanding. He leads post-contact meters, and he's been having a field day at the scrum because of the new rule changes. Not so fun for the halfbacks to try and tackle him. And then Blackadder I would replace over Jacobson for sure. And then again, you've got to talk about the halfback. I really like Cam Roigard. I'm a big fan of him. But TJ Piranata, he hasn't said where he's going next year as well. And I do think, you know, prior to getting injured on the end-of-year tour, he was in some unreal form, you know, back to like when he was playing when he first started. So I think if he can bounce back from his injury, which is hard to do, you know, he's a bit long in the tooth now, you know, and so coming back from injury is a bit harder. But yeah, I like that loose trio adding in Blackadder.
I think the only thing would be, if we're a little bit short, Damien is the only 10. Mo'unga going away.
Pedofeta?
Oh no, Stephen Pedofeta.
Don't forget Pedofeta.
Yeah, so I'll probably look at sort of key positions and where we've got sort of guys coming through. But man, we have, again, I just can't get over the talent that we've got.
It's exciting.
It's exciting.
When you're leaving Caleb Clark out and you've got Leicester in there.
Absolutely.
I know Will Jordan named in that team either.
Yeah, Jeff's left Will Jordan out there too, which, you know, shows just how much thought he's put into this. No, I'm only kidding. Well, it's just he bagged mine and I didn't get a chance to defend it.
Well, here you go, TJ. This is your
Get on TJ. No. Look, I agree. I think that's an exciting looking team. I've just got other names like, you know, Will Jordan,
yes,
obviously, Stephen Pedofeta, obviously. I just like, as I say, I mentioned Gardner there before, but when you think it's going to be a bit of a new look to the coaching staff as well, and that's really exciting about this. It's the whole picture. That's, you know, chance to build something.
It is. It's exciting for the future ahead, isn't it? We also wanted to talk about, of course, there's going to be an exodus like there is after every Rugby World Cup, and a number of players have already said that they'll be going overseas. But what about the ones yet to sign? From what we're led to believe, Rieko Ioane has not yet signed a contract for next year. Leicester Whanganuku is in the same boat, and there's rumours that Roger Tuivasa-Sheck may even head across to Japan next year. Who is the most important signature?
Oh, gee. I mean, if you look at it from an experience point of view and where we sort of lack a bit of stock, it's probably have to be, you'd say, Rieko.
You can't lose him.
We can't, because who else have we sort of, I mean, that's sort of coming through. We've had a mountain of injuries in that position, you know. Goodhue, you know, we've got Antonita Brown sort of being out. Alex Nankerville's had great form. He's going overseas. So you'd have to say, you know, Rieko Ioane. Whanganuku, he's been exceptional as well. He can probably slide in that centre too, so... But definitely for me, it'd have to be Rieko, TJ.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. If you got that spare $1.6 million, chuck some of it at him.
I think we're vulnerable in the midfield, because if you look at the midfield pairing that he's named, Jordie Barrett, Rieko Ioane, they're actually not midfielders when they started their professional careers. They're outsides who have been forced to go into the midfield because of the injuries or because we haven't had the depth that we had wanted. So that's kind of concerning in itself, that our main midfielders are actually outsides who have been converted to midfielders, and we've got so many who are on the injured list. So I do think that we're going to have some issues in the future. Like, there's some good up-and-comers. Like,
I like the way Billy Proctor's playing at the Hurricanes. To me, he's a guy who's shown that, you know, probably a natural 13 but can play 12. Billy's coming on gangbusters. I like that. You know, I think there are options there, but it always gets a bit scary. It's always such a big talking point when players leave. But don't underestimate still the ability of New Zealand you know, to keep producing remarkably talented young rugby players.
You talk about the 1.6 million in Australia, but didn't we do a Silver Lake deal? So hopefully we've got a...
exactly.
Hopefully these players like a Billy Proctor stays in New Zealand. Remember, his brother went overseas after, what was it, one test cap for the All Blacks. So we want these players to stay here.
Yeah, and I think I agree that Rieko, I think, has to be, you know, a priority.
Well, one man who will be going overseas next year is Aaron Smith. He has been back in action for the Highlanders, and there's one thing that we need to mention. It was an incredibly emotional but also a very special match for the Highlanders. They were sporting different haircuts. All the forward pack shaved their heads, and that was for their teammate Josh Dixon, whose brother is struggling with cancer right now. It was a gesture so that they know we're thinking of you, and they were sending their love out to this family. If you go on Give a Little, right there is the page. You can support Josh Dixon, his brother Sam, and their family, who are going through an incredibly tough time at the moment.
Brilliant. Yeah, wonderful. It's someone who's had a bit of a run-in with the big C. I can tell you that sort of love and support is what gets you through.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that as well, TJ. This is coming up this weekend. The Highlanders up against the Hurricanes. Yes, the Highlanders have won 3 on the bounce, but they need to win against New Zealand sides, don't they? We'll talk about that very soon. But first, Aaron Smith joined a very elite club, just the 5th New Zealand player ever to play 350 first-class matches. Here is his happy place.
So my happy place is on a rugby field. I pass the ball a lot in a game, but when I feel one come out of the screws and just absolutely rips and spirals perfectly, everything slows down, and I watch it go all the way into their hands.
Smith again goes wide, Hunt, and Mitch Hunt is through.
And to me, that is what I do, that is my passion, and it's that little moment of grabbing the ball, spotting where I'm going and zinging it. Oh, it's my little happy place.
Oh, back to his best for sure. Aaron Smith, big strike for the Highlanders.
No mai, hoki mai, welcome back into the breakdown. Well, there is a big New Zealand derby coming up this weekend. The Highlanders against the Hurricanes in Wellington. You've got an All Black against potentially an All Black in waiting. We were talking about players that could make the step up in 2024. Jordie Barrett taking on Thomas Umaga Jensen. Where do you see his future, Taylor?
I loved the look of Thomas Jensen. Like, he is such a big, powerful ball carrier. He's kind of that 12 that we've been missing. You know, ever since Ngani Laumape left, we've just missed someone who can just run it up the guts and get good gain line. He just has a fearless attitude, but he's also a good ball player. Like, he's light on his feet for such a big man. He ran past me at one of the games and I thought it was a forward, and then I turned around, it was actually Thomas Jensen. You know, he's still in really good shape. He's got good acceleration. The only thing with him is he just keeps getting injured. You know, he was hitting his straps, I think, for Otago in the MPC last year. Then he got a groin injury and then he kind of had to come back and do rehab, playing for the Highlanders. But he's got a big future. So I think him against Geordie is going to be phenomenal.
Those early rounds, in particular for Umaga Jensen, was quite significant because they're a team that was struggling. They didn't have any sort of wins. So when you see a guy sort of front up and get front foot ball, particularly when your team's going backwards, that's when you know someone's pretty special. Now he's actually getting a decent ride. But Geordie, on the other hand, he loves the physicality too, and he's got a different sort of skill set as well, TJ. Yeah,
good matchup. His gain line stats, Umaga Jensen, are terrific, good as anyone, and this is going to be a good clash. There's a couple of teams, you know, that the Highlanders are bouncing back nicely from a bad start. There's a lot to like about the way the Hurricanes have been playing this year. It's a good game, this.
Yeah, another bit of news that came out from the Hurricanes during the week. For next year, they've signed Brad Shields, their former captain, who was there for the title, of course. That actually breaks the drought, doesn't it, of players going overseas. He's come back after everything that happened in club rugby with Wasps, and he brings back all that international experience. With no Ardie Savea at the Hurricanes next year, they get stronger. Yeah,
you lose a phenomenal player like Ardie and everything that he means to that team. I think this is a great signing because he brings a lot of, you know, not just experience, he's still got plenty of power in his game. He's not Ardie, can't do all of those things, but he brings plenty.
Well, let's talk about another report that is circling at the moment, and that is the potential switch of former Chiefs, former Wallabies mentor Dave Rennie to the Blues next year. If it is to happen, Mills, what would he take to that environment?
Oh, that'd be massive.
It'd be strange.
It'd be a bit strange because remember we had the haka incident with Rieko Ioane, so perhaps he signs, Rieko Ioane as well. But I love it. I love the fact that he's coming back. He's an exceptional coach, and the way that sort of he was let go by, Australian rugby is quite disappointing. But what he did with the Chiefs, back-to-back champions, and so his experience is going to be huge. Bringing that sort of intellectual property back to New Zealand, Taylor.
Oh, and also such a big load of mana. Like, you know, he carries so much mana and a lot of the players respect him, and what he did with the Chiefs, but he's also gone and coached other teams as well. So he's got all that knowledge from then, and they're bringing the international knowledge back into the game as well. And I think, like the Blues, I do feel sorry for Leon McDonald because if they don't get a title this year, it's going to be hard for him because he has coached them well. They just haven't been executing it themselves. So can Dave Rennie just sharpen those skills a little bit more? I don't know.
It would be Australia's loss, our gain.
Yep. Nice.
Simple as that.
Yep.
Nice. Nicely said, TJ. Well, club rugby has started in some parts of the country. It will start in other parts this weekend, but we've got a notice board for you. We're going to do this every week, bring you all the news out of our clubs across the country. Our first piece of news for you, Hamilton Marist. It is their centenary this weekend, their centenary lunch. You can get tickets from their website above. Big game as well against Matamata this weekend. And TJ, you've got some club news for us too.
Well, look, I just firstly, I hope it's a great weekend. I was at Marist. My great friend Kevin Hart passed away, and they had the after match at the Marist Club. It's a great setup. But I just wanted to send a shout out to the club that I love, Waitohi and Picton. Tim O'Malley of Markle. He's going to be player coach this year, and I know that the guys are really inspired to play well for Diane Iverme, who's an old school friend of mine who passed away sadly last year, about the same time as my dad went. She held that club together for years, and I know she is going to be the inspiration. So go the toys, do it for Di.
For you two, what clubs are you supporting this year?
I'm Sparta Life all day. Suburbs, you used to play for Suburbs. I hope you still back there.
Just about to give that shout out to Suburbs. The under-6 Panthers and the under-7 Panthers. Well, there's not under-7 Panthers.
Are you coaching or?
No, I'm not, but no, I'll be down there Friday and Saturday morning.
Is that a good thing you're not coaching?
Yeah, it is a good thing. It is a good thing.
Yeah, very good. And Go Tauranga Sports in the Tauranga competition, Baywide competition as well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you too for joining us on the panel as well. And as always, Mel's brilliant. We'll see you on the breakdown back here, same time next week.